something that a lot of people have been talking about here in Florida is cell phone use in schools. And one county, Orange County, has decided that all public school students will now be banned from using their cell phones from the first bell to the final period. That includes at lunchtime. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to clarify some things about this new, cell phone school ban. Your child can bring their phone to school with them. It will just have to be on silent and then put away in a bag of some sort, whether it's their backpack or their pocketbook. If you don't carry a bag, I'm not totally sure. They didn't address that. If it would have to be in a locker or if you would have to leave it with a teacher, at the beginning of class and then pick it up when you're leaving. But from the first bell to the final period of school, cell phones will no longer be allowed to be used in Orange County public schools here in the state of Florida. We had this conversation on the radio, and I was blown away by, once again, how divided people were on this subject line. The people who loved it. Finally, they shouldn't have them in school at all. It's about time. These things are the bane of our existence for many reasons. And then you had the people that were on the other side of the conversation that were like, absolutely not. There's too much, there's too many school shootings. The likelihood of there being an emergency is just too high. They need to be able to communicate with me at all times.
Yeah. And I feel the people that want their kids to have phones in school are idiots. But besides that, I think, and I was starting to tell you before that at my kids' school, they did kind of an experiment.
Okay.
Allowing the kids to use their phones.
For actual schoolwork?
Okay. And with like a tablet. And epic fail.
What happened? Did they spend more time?
Kids can't use
YouTube
they can't.
TikTok.
Who knows what? They're probably texting their friends. They're doing whatever. If you have your phone out, remember when we were kids, you had to write a note on a piece of paper and slide it across the desk. You so now the kids could just be sitting and texting. If the teacher, we're looking up, the square root of blah, 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 bullshit. You're texting the girl over there. They can't have their phones in class anymore. They have to park their phones in class.
Where are their phones in class?
Some classes have pockets that they all put their phones in.
Okay, yeah.
And some just you have to keep them put away.
Okay.
They still can use them at lunch, which I don't necessarily think is a great thing. And that goes more to
socialization.
Yeah. I mean, kids sit next to each other and text each other.
No.
That's stupidity.
So I love that you said that because my producer on my radio show is 26 years old, brilliant, has been a musician, his whole life. So something tells me he's more of the at lunch, I'm going to be listening to music kid. You know what I mean? And that was his only point of contention with not having phones. He was like, I think that they should be able to have them at lunch. He was like, what about the kids who sit by themselves anyway? And I said, read a book, do a Sudoku. I don't know. Try the New York Times crossword puzzle. Talk to somebody you don't know. I mean, I was joking when I said that, but I was like, decompress your brain a little bit, right? You're learning all day. Eat
socialize
your lunch,
a little bit.
Socialize. Then I had somebody who pointed out, because I made a joke when I was putting together this reel to have this conversation on the radio, I listed out some of the reasons why this particular school district wanted to do this. Obviously, they wanted children to be less distracted in class. If you don't know, there are kids watching whole YouTube videos, listening to playlists. They've got their AirPods in, you know what I'm saying? And they are completely disengaged from the classroom experience. To Lenny's point, you have other kids that are communicating back and forth. They're texting, they're on iMessage, they're on WhatsApp, whatever the case may be. There's a million different ways for them to communicate, sliding in DMs, and somebody pointed out, I love when old people act like kids don't know how to talk to each other. They said, this is the most empathetic, communicative generation, of all time. And I said, they're also the most depressed. They're the most anxious, they're the most stressed out. So, I mean, hey, pick your poison, because a lot of people will correlate the stress, the anxiety, and the depression also to the cell phone.
I heard a funny stat the other day that I almost can't believe it's real,
Mhm.
but then on the other hand, I can believe it's real. That the average age for a male losing his virginity in the United States is 31.
Where'd you find that statistic?
I'm telling you, it was on another podcast, and it goes to
That does not mean that it's factual.
but
all.
but it would make sense
Why would it make
because
sense,
of
Lenny?
the anti-socialization that's going on. The kids
No,
that are
but
getting
but a 31-year-old right now was born in the 90s.
Yeah, I
So
feel you.
that doesn't
I feel
really
you.
no. I mean, if
I feel
they
you.
were talking about Gen Zers not losing their virginity until they're 31, then maybe
I feel you. I'm gonna do a little research on
Yeah,
that's a future episode. The loss of socialization is tremendous. You mean you're allowing your kids to go into their own world, which they can't stay in forever.
Mhm.
So if you raise your kids like they're in their own world, when they go to the real world, they're shell shocked.
Mhm.
They're shell shocked.
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't listen to my iPad? I can't listen to my playlist when I'm at work. 'Cause you're working.
I love that you pointed that out because, being shell shocked extends beyond just, not being allowed to be on your phone. Some of the comments that were left on Instagram and that, people who called into my show had me absolutely blown away. Like, one was, no, I need to reach my kids at all times with all the mass shootings and more. This isn't it. So my response back to this person was, well, they can still bring their phones to school. They just can't use them during the school day. I said, do you text your kids while they're in school? I said, I remember back in the day, if there was an emergency, parents would call the school, call the front office, and then they'd come get you from class.
Yeah.
They either paid you to come to the office or they'd send, send a kid who was on office duty to the classroom to get you and bring you to the office, and then the principal would relay whatever was going on. Or if it was really serious, your parent might be there waiting for you, like, hey, we need to go, grandma's in the hospital or whatever. Her response to that was, I definitely text my kids during school. Immediately. You gotta love social media. Somebody completely uninvolved jumps in. You should not be texting your kids while they're in class for any reason. During lunch, between periods is another thing, but distracting them during instructional time sounds pretty entitled to me. Somebody else says, exactly. Somebody else says, well, she then says, Julia, simmer down, stop assuming. And then somebody else says, oh, stop it, you're part of the problem. Put your kid's phone down. He doesn't need to call you all the time. There was a time when kids just went to school, didn't talk to their parents or anybody all day, and then came home at 3:30. And to top it off, it's no more dangerous out there than it was when we were kids. You just see everything now because everybody has a video camera. There were still kids getting raped and molested back then and stolen and killed.
Everything.
Your kid having a cell phone does not fix other people's mental illnesses.
It blows my mind that kids are, always pointing out that how out of touch the previous generation is. That's one of my favorite things. Meanwhile, we had all the same kids in our school that they do in their school.
Mm-hmm.
It's
yeah, but Lenny, this isn't a kid. This is a parent.
No, I get that. Well, parents.
This is a parent who's in her 40s,
but
who is literally
we've talked a lot
a
lot on this podcast about the education system in this country, and then you have parents that complain about this, that, and the other, but yet they want to distract their kids from learning. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense.
Where does that kind of parenting come from? Because
it's a helicopter mom.
No. Your wife is a bit of a helicopter mom. And I mean that no. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because I think she's an amazing mother. But like, she definitely has Find My iPhone on the kids, and she knows where they are and all of those things. But I could never imagine Rachel texting, unless it was an emergency situation, texting the kids in the middle of the day like, hey, what do you want for dinner?
No.
Like, do you know what I'm saying? Because she values education. Plus, she knows how much you guys spend to send your kids to a private school. Like, no, you're there to learn. You're there to be engaged in whatever is happening in your classroom. You're there to be, with your friends, with your teammates,